Welcome back to another episode of Ideas to Human Better. I am your host, Eva Payne, and today we are talking about trip sitting and how to be a good trip sitter. If you have a friend or someone you care about or someone you don't even know, you're at a rave, you're at a concert, how do you sit with someone and hold space for them? And I brought in an expert, Ashley Michaud. She is an amazing human who has over 18 years of experience working with plant medicines, and she runs a company called Elemental Growth where she does a lot of beautiful things, and one of those things is integration work. So I'm going to bring her in and have her introduce herself. Welcome, Ashley, to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure as always, Eva. You're amazing human too. You know, this I guess it's that magnetic law of attraction brings us all together at the right time, right?
Such perfect timing. You know, I've been running these retreats in Oregon for women and doing all this healing. And one of the things we integrate in is psilocybin. And so far out of all the retreats, I've had two experiences where women kind of struggled. And I thought, I need to have a little bit more training around trip sitting. And especially for what I'm noticing is that women who have come to the retreat want to come back and help. They're so moved by the experience. They're like, I want to come and volunteer. And I'm just like, yes, please. You know, you have such beautiful energy. And I thought, well, do they have any experience in how to sit with someone who's going through this journey? Because I mean, you could have a room full of people all having a beautiful experience, but what happens when someone is having a little bit of a challenging experience transitioning from this world, this 3D world, into what's on the other side? And so I thought, I'm going to do a little video here with Ashley, and hopefully it helps people who are out there and just like looking for some advice on how to hold space for someone. So before we dive into that, I would love for you to tell people a little bit about yourself, your work, and your background, and then we'll get into my list of trip sitting questions that I have for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name's Ashley Michaud. A lot of my friends call me naturally Ashley, or just Ashley is cool too. So I started Elemental Growth in 2017, and before that, my journey started just as a natural herbalist. I swear I was like such a weirdo in school. My girlfriends would all be like trying on different makeups and all this stuff, and I would go home being one of the first families with actual computer, because my mom actually taught computer classes, so we had the benefit of that at home. And I would print off these recipes that I would find for like making your own makeup and things. So I started in that journey like very young, and I watched with my family go into spirals of addiction and mental health issues and stuff. And I really wanted to do something about that too. And because I knew that I had this gift for like finding the natural alternatives to everything. It's 108, by the way, really. It's an angel number there. But yeah, I knew that I wanted to do something else, and I started spending more time at my grandparents' farm. You know, I just like eat clovers off the ground, like all of these things. So it came naturally to me, I think, the idea of psychedelic medicines. And at the time, being a young kid, a teenager, at the time when I was first, started with cannabis and started with mushrooms, I wasn't exactly seeing it as a medicine, but I saw it as what it is, a natural alternative to the substances that everybody else was using. And, I was able to break a lot of family karmic patterns, we'll call them, because of my choice to work with the natural substance over the synthetic. And I think one of the big pieces of this that I've learned is that, when you're working with a whole plant, there's a whole lot of information, and that the person themselves feels whole when they're working with it. And whereas when you're eating like a bunch of processed food, and I studied nutrition in 2017, why I launched Elemental Growth that year. And, I noticed in that when people were coming to me saying, oh, I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle, I'm like, just go eat some whole foods, go for that medicine that's, using the whole plant, whether it's a herb, an entheogen, a psychedelic. It's been a belief that I've had. I think I was born with, and it's just been validated time after time after time. And so yeah, I do have a few certificates that I have. When I first started doing trip sitting and field trips, being a group of people, I had just healed myself, and I quit smoking cigarettes. I had quit drinking. I had just come back from a trip to South America when I was like walking barefoot with nothing but a 20-liter backpack, no map, no phone, no nothing. So I really wanted to share this stuff with other people, and so I was doing trip sitting and field trips. At that time, I was working with the medicine at that time that I was doing it too, but I was also making sure that I had integration space in between being a big component. So we have host our experiences on the weekends, and during the week was all integration time, and lived off grid. There wasn't we had electricity, but there was no Wi-Fi or anything. One day out of the week, we drag a cable from the neighbor's house into our lawn and download music and stuff like that. It was it was a funny time of life. But I ended up healing myself so much that I was able to conceive a child that the doctors told me I wouldn't be able to because of medical issues and hormonal imbalances and such. And so when I had found out I really can have kids, I was like, even more so of getting sober, I was like, wow, I really have healed myself. And then I got really scared. And I was like, I can't do what I've been doing all this time. I can't share the same messages. I'm going to be thrown in a cage. I'll be separated from my child. What's the point of becoming a mom if, going to lose my career that I'm passionate about, all these things. And I came back to my roots. I came back to the integration space, all the other work that I was passionate about, the natural alternatives. And so I went to school for nutrition, then hormone health and coaching mastery and Reiki mastery, and all of these things just go. And by the end of it, I was like, I still just want to talk about psychedelics. So here we are. I published 2 books since, one on the integration process, one on working with psychedelics. And I speak, I coach, I parent, I live life.
I love it. I just love your energy, and I love that you're just authentic to the medicines that are calling you and to helping people, really figure out, because people are out there journeying, whether it's on their own or in a group or, somewhere in some part of the world. And it's like, how do we do this safely? And how do we do this in a way that then it's not just about the experience, but what do you do with it after, And so I love that you are someone in that space, really helping people figure out that integration piece. And that's just and I thank you so much for showing up at the retreats on that integration day and helping the women really embody the experience that they had. So let's back it up. So before we get to integration, we got to talk about the actual journey. So let's just dive in first. What is trip sitting? In your definition of it?
I think you nailed the description right there, just saying that it's just holding space for another person or for several people. Oftentimes in the retreat ceremony is one person for every 3 people. Daycare is really similar. It can be one person to every 3 to 5 kids. And I think that that's a good rule of thumb for it in that way. So sometimes you may need several trip sitters if it's a big group, but if it's just one-on-one, which is where I like to be when I'm holding ceremony and holding space, I still love the one-on-one. Same with coaching. I feel that connection, I can bring people further, I can give my all when it's single pointed focus. And so let's dive into, I guess, what that looks like is just holding that space. You make the decision to work with this medicine, and then there comes the preparation, right? And whether it's giving birth and working with a midwife or working with a doula, it's kind of the same thing. This is a rebirth, right? And we're rebirthing ourselves. So we want to make sure that we have a coach or somebody. And if you want to be that somebody for somebody else, all you need to do in there is go in with preparation, go in selflessly, knowing what it is that they want, in addition to your own personal experience. Don't do this if you've never worked with the medicine before. I wouldn't recommend that. Because you're not going to know, you're not going to have the same understanding. But if you have worked with the medicine, you want to hold that space, you go in with your current understanding as well as their intentions. What are their intentions? What do they hope to get out of it? And then take all of your stuff out of it. Leave it at the door. When you walk into that room, you're there as their spirit guide, their light. And you'll understand what that means if you've worked with the medicine before and you've experienced that through the medicine teachers. And so that's what you're there to assist that, because moving from one dimension into the other one isn't always that comfortable. We often go to hell before heaven. We have to not only see the hell, but feel it and surrender to it, and then we get the euphoria, and then we get the heaven. And so our job as a trip sitter, I think, is to ease that transition, so that they feel safe even if they're in hell, so that if the medicine guides are not being so gentle, that they can they still have the ease and the comfort of knowing that they're safe, that they're protected, that they can express themselves however that they want without judgment. And then beyond that, coming into the euphoria phase of it, there's this space that you can hold there for passing them a journal, or walking them through different yoga moves, breathing techniques, to transition into that phase safer. There's also a great training manual I'll recommend to anybody, and that's the Zendo project, and you'll likely be able to download it for free. It was free, at least when I did that training, and in there, it's the Zendo project. They work at Burning Man, so it's all about peer-to-peer support. So it's a great resource there, and they even talk about helping people in the dangers, what to look for. If you can be prepared in that way of what to look for and how to ease it from people who have already done this, it's going to be an asset, because everybody expresses themselves differently, and I think that Eva's got some examples to share at the end of our live stream today, so I can walk you through that. But just generalize, check out the Zendo project and connect with some of the members in that group if you're interested in hearing more about that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that resource. I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about, as you were talking, the thought came in, the relationship between the person having the psychedelic experience and the trip sitter. How important is that relationship? Is that trust, even before they kind of go into that journey? What are your feelings or thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I do a lot of preparation work beforehand. Like, I have kind of like a suitcase that I bring. It's got a yoga mat, it's got tea, it's got I always have a different music playlist. Like, if I know somebody, for example, likes rock music and have been listening to rock music in their drinking days, or when trauma was happening, I'll have like dance music, or like or something else that's not going to bring them into those states, so that they can get what they need out of it, a different kind of environment. And I'm not saying like dance music, like rave music. I mean like a chill step, or something like that, where the triggers are going to be less, especially if I know it's somebody with trauma. I bring the yoga mat, because if you're moving your body, you can transition a lot easier through the feelings, right? You got to feel it to free it. And the best way to feel it and free it is when you can be in control of your body, instead of like helping it move out, instead of keeping it stuck, which creates a lot of resistance and makes it even more uncomfortable. Breath work, very much the same. I like to roll a joint because sometimes people are have a very hard time when the first onset is. It can feel very intense. And so a joint will help ground. It's not always necessarily, not everybody likes it. Yeah, what else do I do? There's always tea that I bring, again, like something soothing. I match the tea to the person, what their intentions are. Tulsi tea is usually a good one for women because it's really good for hormones. It's called holy basil. So something about bringing something holy into a holy experience, I always feel makes the whole thing whole. And yeah, so those are probably some of my signatures, and then just preparing with the person what it is that their intentions are. I always ask. I ask before I even book the ceremony on a clarity call, but I also ask again through text before the ceremony, the night before, and then I ask again when I'm face to face with the person. So because it does always change, and as they do, right? And as they get closer to that goal, and I like to just make sure that I have that rapport. Sometimes you may not know the people that you're going to be trip sitting for, so it's important to find those connections. Make sure you're on the same page. If it's somebody you're really close to that you're going to be trip sitting for, a friend or a family member, the rapport is there, but it's still important in that case to keep it professional. Don't attach to any outcome. So there's, a type of connection that you need, but also good to also keep boundaries. Don't be attached to the person and their outcome. Once you know it, and once you're able to hold space in that way, and it's in your heart and you've connected heart to heart, you have to let go of any outcome. And you'll know that if you work with the medicine before anyway. We set our own intentions, but it's got another plan for us. It gives us what we need, not exactly what we want.
I love that. Let's talk about physical contact. That just popped into my head. So I want to ask you, do you hold someone's hand? Do you have their hand on their shoulder? Are you just sitting next to them? Like what kind of physical contact might you have with someone who's going through that experience and transitioning into that other space?
Yes, so I'm kind of a hands-on person, but it depends on the person. I like to, and I always ask before I do, even with Reiki. I like to practice Reiki in my everyday life. And I often will, if I see somebody, just ask, do you mind if I put my hands on you? It's the same thing in ceremony. Is I do ask, even if it's somebody that I'm really close to, because I want to keep that professional boundary in that situation. But it's very comforting. A lot of people are touch deprived. So it's good, especially if you can touch the heart, if you can, sometimes it's like a facial massage or just holding a hand. Or, sometimes it might even be holding a foot when they're just laying there, and just a little bit of touch, it can soothe the body. Babies, they can die if touch deprived, and we forget about that when we're adults. But we are very touch deprived. So I'm an advocate for it, but always ask permission around that. And a lot of the time too, before I go into like wanting to do what I want to do, like of course, even though I want to touch, I always give them an opportunity to do yoga first. So I'll like show them a move, or guide them through, or let them know what to do, or can even help them, just inspire them to get on and like stretch as deep as they can. Andrew Weil said something a long time ago about being able to do better at martial arts and yoga because there are no restrictions at that point. So sometimes they're really able to, on their own accord, heal themselves just by stretching into some deep areas that don't normally get that kind of attention, because they're out of their mind and able to do that with their body for the first time in their life. So I often opt for that before going for my default mode network, which is just, do you mind if I hold your hand? Do you mind if I put my hand on your heart? Do you mind if I, just do a waterfall technique on your face, or different things like that?
That's really beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's dive a little bit into, before I go into like the people who are having a difficult time transitioning, is there any other thoughts on just in general, while someone's in that journey, that 5 hours, 5 to 6 hours, anything else that you incorporate in or that you do, any other tips for someone out there, for someone who's just having like a good experience? You know, they're able to take the medicine, lay down, or be in nature, wherever you are, and they're just their journey's doing well, and you're just like, kind of like you said, babysitting in a way, right? Like you're just kind of in that space with them. Anything else that you incorporate in, or thoughts for other people out there?
Sometimes I do nothing but sit there. Like, to be honest, like, we can talk about all the tools and techniques that we want to use, that we're trained in, that we're everything, but sometimes you don't have to do anything, but just sit there and be present and let them do what they're meant to do. I worked with this medicine a lot on my own, and I know the power of that. And while it takes restraint to be there, especially when somebody's paid me money, right? Like, that's the worst, when somebody pays you money and all you want to do is like give value, value, value. But I realize that that is selfish, and that takes away from the experience sometimes, and that people get more out of the experience of just healing themselves and doing it themselves. And sometimes they just pay you to be there. So if this is the route that you want to go in that way, just know that you can prepare as much as you want, but sometimes you don't have to use anything. Sometimes all you have to do is just be quiet and allow them to transition however they want. And then there's more work to do in the integration phase.
Love that. Thank you. All right. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios of things that happened at my retreat, because for the first several, everyone was just peaceful. We use the therapeutic model where they put on their eye shades, they're listening to music, they're laying in a bed or sitting outside or whatever, and they just go in and everything's hunky-dory, and we check in on them and they give us a thumbs up, and maybe they want to talk for a minute or two, but not really. They kind of just go, I kind of want to go back in. I'm like, yeah, you go back in, you have your experience. They got their journal out, pictures of their family around, you know, candle going, like all this beautiful stuff. Now, I had a gal at one of the last retreats, and it hit her quick and hard. And it was this laughing, crying, so loud, it took up the whole house, you know, the whole space. And she almost couldn't even get words out. So it was just this, and she was holding her breath a little bit. So trying to get her to breathe, like she would laugh, cry, and then take a deep breath and then kind of hold it, laugh, cry. And it was just, she was not ready to lie down. She was not ready to be alone. So what do you say in that situation?
Let it go. Like, okay. So you can sometimes change the environment, but I understand if you're in a situation where you're caring for a lot of women, that's not always, you're not always able to do that, nor is it always safe to move somebody if they're going through it. But you can embrace it, like just allow her to go through it. I'm sure you did exactly what I would have done, and just, you know, move through it, and then also make sure that everybody else is getting what they need. You know, if maybe one of the other members isn't able to go as deep because somebody else is taking the space, you can move them into another area where they can have that quiet time. I know I've personally, in my own experiences, removed myself from situations to be by myself in those times. But yeah, I guess I don't have like too much feedback here. When you have you have to just expect that things like this are going to happen. Like, if you have that many women in a room, some of them have never experienced themselves. You know, some of them haven't had that space to express themselves in their entire life, you know, and so that then they're tapping into that childhood self, all those times that they wanted to express themselves and that they couldn't. And so, you know, part of your job is to give them that space, and then all you need to do is just make sure that they get what they need, and that everybody else is also getting what they need, which may be changing the environments for some of the other members.
I love that. Well, everyone was in their own room, and she kind of came down and was sitting in the living room. And what was interesting was one of the other gals who was in her room was like, thinking that, you know, because you feel very telepathic. I don't know, a lot of people they feel very telepathic. One of the other gals in the room was like, "What are you laughing at?" Like she was talking out loud down to the gal downstairs, like, "Oh, it was so funny," because it was like this crying, laughing kind of a space. And at one point, and we just sat next to her, you know, we had our hand on her knee and just let her, just kept her breathing, you know, just making sure she wasn't holding her breath and that she just was breathing through it. And at one point she says, am I allowed to take up space? And I said, you can take up all the space you want. Like, I didn't care that that it was loud and that it was this combination of laughing and crying. And she was so happy that she could take up space, because I think she felt like you were saying, she felt like she had to be small her whole life. And now here she is, like, expressing herself in this very like belly laughing kind of a way, you know? So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay. Next one. Any other thoughts before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, mushrooms can be really entertaining sometimes, especially when it's somebody's first time, you know, and like I talk a lot about heaven and hell and rebirth and all of this like intense stuff because I've been working with them for so long, and I work with some really intense people that are going through intense things. But, you know, like, let's not underestimate them here. They can be really entertaining at times, and their process for, you know, enticing us to work with them more and more is sometimes just that kind of relief. Laughter is the best medicine, and Dennis McKenna said it the best, which is that, you know, it helps us tap into that cosmic giggle, and it's so important. It's important medicine. So that was my last note on that. Is actually I'll share a little bit of a story too on it. Is that like one time I legitimately thought I was dying from just dosing a heroic dose, and I was on the bed like thinking like, this is it, like I should have done a will of like, all of these things. I'm like, my body's like being consumed here. And then I was like, yeah, I ate the mushrooms, but they're actually the ones consuming me right now. And I just started laughing, and as soon as I laughed, I went right into the heaven. It was like I shot off into another universe, and I was finally free because I surrendered to the cosmic giggle. So there's something in that.
I love that. And that does bring me to my next one. So, and it's really just that sort of onset. It's that first like 45 minutes to an hour of that transition. And the gal was saying, this other gal was saying, oh my gosh, this is so much. Oh my gosh, I'm so effed up. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I pay for this? Am I dying right now? And I just have to, like, you're safe. You are fine. You know, yes, you did pay for this. Let's just breathe through this. And it took like 45 minutes, and she went from this fear kind of a state to starting to laugh. And once she started laughing, she was good to go. But it's that onset of, oh my gosh, it's just so different. And she just like couldn't stop like touching and moving and feeling and like, what is happening? What did I do? Did I do this to myself? Like, am I going to be okay? And so what do you do with someone who's just really struggling with that? Like just being in the moment, surrendering, leaning into the experience until they can get to that laughter phase.
Yeah, my favorite tool again is yoga, moving the body. It doesn't have to be yoga. When I would do trip sitting and stuff in the past, when I had a lot of property and access to beach and everything, what we would do is do a forest walk and then go into the beach, and everybody would lay down on the beach because it was private, and nobody ever really walked the waterfront there or anything. And so we just look up at the stars, and it was quite a different experience. But again, we were still moving the body. A lot of that 40-minute, like when the onset was happening, we were walking. There was no able to stop. I remember one time I could hear the trees talking to me, and I was like, I was actually kind of scared of them. Like, if I keep like going in that direction, like I might end up schizophrenic or something like that. But again, I came to laughing, and I got myself back on the trail, and I was like, okay, I'm going. But there are these like moments that are scary, but if you're moving your body, you can feel it and free it. I think it's the main thing there. And if you're, maybe that is yoga, maybe that's going for a nature walk. I remember even in the winter one time was just out, and I started breaking ice and like shoveling snow because I just had to do something that was moving. And at that time, yoga wasn't in my life. So I think I've been validated in that in my own personal experience so many times that moving is what gets it out. And it's a great integration tool too for afterwards. If you can learn how to do this in a trip, for example, then when you're in your real life, it'll be more of a default mode network. Whereas, you know, sometimes it ends up being like screaming or yelling or like getting angry in other ways, or even worse, holding it all in and never expressing yourself. So if you can learn to express it through movements in your body, all the better. Like now I've transitioned like years of Kundalini yoga. Now it's like Kundalini dance. I just got my instructors for that. And yeah, it's all life changing when you can move your body in those ways. And a lot of it for Kunda dance, like it's just somatic shaking. Like you're just doing the same repetitive movements over and over, but it gets it out. Laughing does the same thing, right? This is why laughter yoga and laughter in general is so powerful, because it's somatic. You're like, ah, ha, ha, ha. You get like the belly jiggle and everything, and it's great. And guess what, ladies? That like gets rid of that muffin top too, if you can do that. So there's a lot of
done laughter yoga. It was so funny. We all laid on each other's bellies in this like weird like shape, and one person starts laughing and your head's on someone else's stomach and they start laughing, and it's funny to have their head bouncing and everyone just starts laughing. It was very freeing, this laughter yoga stuff. I just love that. Okay, any other thoughts on someone having a difficult time transitioning, or what, you know, bad trip experience? I love that, moving your body, changing the environment, bringing in laughter. Those are great tips. Anything else that comes to mind before I ask you my integration question?
Yeah, you really just have to surrender. You need to have enough faith and belief that you're going to be okay. Like the truth is, guys, mushrooms have never killed anybody. There's like people out there that do 17 grams, 70 grams. It don't matter. You couldn't eat enough mushrooms to really harm yourself. This being said, it was a rule on cannabis too, that cannabis could never hurt anybody and never did hurt anybody. But you know, it gets synthesized and change. So like, do be aware that way, but like, you know, I'm not saying that it would never happen, just for a disclaimer, but the truth is, like, these medicines are very safe. They're safer than caffeine. You're going to be okay. If you drank a coffee before and got in the jitters, just think about how you made it through that. A lot of the time I'll surrender, because I'll be like, I've been through worse than this, you know. Oftentimes it'll be like almost like a near-death experience where you start seeing your entire life before your eyes. A lot of the stuff that you hated about yourself, or a lot of the stuff that that you didn't want to think about and that you pushed down, it brings it up because you're safe, you guys. It brings it up because you're at a time and a place in your life where you're the safest and you can finally deal with these things. So it's happening for you, not to you. And that's so important to know. It's important to prepare yourself and your body in that way. Like Kambo is very much a purgative. In the way that I'm work with it nowadays, it's more meditative than purgative. But most people knowing Kambo, it's a purgative. And so that's never pleasant. Neither is ayahuasca for that same reason. So, you know, I had to prepare my body for this. I'm going to be taking poison into my body. And guess what? I'm preparing my body for it, and I'm preparing my elimination organs. And I love you, elimination organs, and I love you, body. And we're doing this for the greater good. And, you know, it's so telling yourself this, telling yourself like, it's happening for you, not to you. If something's coming up that you don't like, if something's coming up that you've tried to oppress or that was oppressed from you, you know, like sexual abuse is one that comes up with clients a lot. You know, stuff from there, or other kinds of abuse, and narcissistic abuse, and these things. So they've been oppressed a lot, told that they can't talk about these things. And that becomes a default mode network. what these do is allow us, we're taking them because we're in a safe place. We paid and invested to go to a retreat, to be with safe people and in a safe place. So you need to trust in that. You need to trust that you're here right now for a reason, that you're going through this for a reason. And that reason is that you are safe and you're finally able to get it out. And how amazing is that? You get it out in a safe place and that you're already there? Amazing. It's miraculous. That's the
I
healing.
love it. I love it. I had a woman who said she was so nervous that when we were going to come in on check on her, that she was crying a lot, and not like a hysterical, but just like this release of crying. And she thought at first, what are they going to think I look like? You know, if I'm crying so much, like, are they going to think that I look a certain way? And then she thought, how ridiculous. Who cares that I'm crying? And now I include Kleenex into all of the women's like journey bags, because almost everyone cries, right? It's just like letting go of the stuff you've been holding on to. And so it's okay to cry, to have those emotions come out, whether it's the laughter, whether it's the crying, or whatever it is that's inside.
Yeah, absolutely. It's powerful. And it's part of what you guys signed up for, to be honest, is that release. And sorry, it's uncomfortable. But I know the mushrooms would never apologize, but I will for them. Like, you know, the amount of hell you're going to go through is going to show you what good is on the other side. That's what makes us appreciated. That's where the gratitude comes from. And be grateful for the release, be grateful for the opportunity, because it's once in a lifetime. This is like a bucket list experience.
I love it. Okay, last question. I know we're running out of time. I had a gal who messaged me from one of the retreats, and I'll just kind of touch a couple lines. She says, have any of you experienced since the retreat and microdosing that you feel, I don't know, more deeply connected to humans and to human suffering? Since I came home, everything touches me more deeply, slays me, humbles me, takes me to my knees. I feel so much deep joy and gratitude, but also mind-numbing grief and sadness, deep feelings of anger, loss, sadness, grief. So what are your thoughts on that? On like how the mushrooms then, or whatever psychedelics you might be partaking in, like how does that affect you in this way that we become so much more connected to just our humanness? And what do we do with that?
Okay. So, like Terence McKenna said something pretty amazing about like, don't trust the gurus, just trust yourself, especially if you're working with medicines like this, because you'll do what therapy will take 10 years to do or a lifetime to do in 6 hours. You're going to experience what meditation promises in like within the first hour. You know, you're gonna like DMT even faster, like 6 minutes you're there and back. So like there's no messing around here. Terence McKenna made a massive statement about that meditation just isn't fast enough. There is a promise there to be more sensitive, to open up through different modalities, through different guru tools. But psychedelics just do it faster, and it's really what the world needs right now. We need a massive wake up. We need more people to feel this empathy, to feel what's going on in the world, not so that you sit with it, but so that you take action on it. So, mushrooms are here and they show us what work is ours to do, but it's our job to do that work. So if you're feeling sensitive, that means that the mushrooms worked. They did their job, but you're not doing your job. Your job in the integration space to find what work is yours to do, because if you're focused on the work, then what's happening wouldn't matter so much, because your focus would be on what you want to create in the world, becoming the change you want to see in the world. You wouldn't be focused on the problem, because you'd be focused on the solution. Who is that? John Lennon, right? You know, there are no problems, only solutions. No, I take that a step further and I say, for every problem, offer yourself 3 solutions. So if you're seeing a problem in the world, chances are it's up to you to fix that. And you did that. You had no connection to anybody, any children with HIV at all. And you saw that there was a problem there, and you created a nonprofit organization. And how much focus, faith, and effort did it take to be successful in that?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. So if you're putting your focus, your faith, and your effort into your work, then then the sensitivity has a purpose. The sensitivity is already there for a purpose. It's just up to you to live out your purpose. And it is natural. It doesn't matter whether it's that you're eating cleaner, doing meditation, have a yoga practice, work with psychedelic mushrooms. They're all going to make you more sensitive. Like fasting, for example. If anybody does a fasting experience, which I recommend on the full moon, is like always a great time to do that. We're more magnetic. We stay up later. It's a nice time to have that once a month, just like cleanse. And so if you just practice a fast, you'll hit this point where you start feeling every other person that's ever been through a famine. You start feeling the people who are starving. You start tapping into those children. You know, you start caring deeply about
I think you paused for a second there.
The problem is that we're desensitized in this culture. You know, and we gotta use the force for knowledge and defense. So take that sensitivity and turn it into an asset.
I love that. Yeah. And just whatever you're called to do, right? You may not be able to feed everyone who needs to be fed, but maybe you can make a meal for someone, right? For one person, or whatever it might be that you feel called to do. Like what's within your capacity to serve, to fill a need, and do that.
And what's hitting you on that emotional level? What is it that's coming up for you in your universe? Not comparing yourself to anybody else or holding yourself to any standard or bar, but just look in your life and where you're at now. What's showing up for you? What's making you sensitive? What's you know, what are you complaining about? Like sometimes that's the best place to start. You want to fix those things that you're complaining about in your life, then, you know, find solutions to those things and start there.
I love it. Ashley, where can people find you? How can they connect with you, especially if they want to get going on this integration piece of things and get some coaching done by you? What's the best way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is always through my website, elementalgrowth.org. And there in the resource section, you'll find tons of free stuff. You can find my books there, and you can find our integration collective. The app is free. We host it for free. So if you're just looking for peer-to-peer support in that way, you can access it, elementalgrowth.org.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you. I adore you. I love your energy, and for doing this work and fulfilling so many needs in the world around in this space. Like you are definitely an expert, and I look to you with like I just one day I'll be like Ashley. Like you're so beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate
Thank you, Eva. It's honestly my honor always. Thank you so much for having me here. I'll talk to you soon, and looking forward to meeting all you beautiful souls too.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for being here on another episode of Ideas to Human Better. Go be a good trip sitter out there if you feel called to do that. Thank you guys so much, and we'll chat with you later.
Bye.